There are moments on television that nobody can prepare for. Not the host, not the production crew, and certainly not the families standing under those bright studio lights. What happened on Family Feud on a quiet Thursday afternoon in April 2024 would become one of those moments that people would talk about for years to come. Steve Harvey had seen everything in his decade of hosting the show. He had witnessed tears of joy, unexpected victories, and heartwarming family moments. But nothing could have prepared him for what was about to unfold when the Martinez family from Phoenix, Arizona stepped onto that stage. Sometimes, the truth has a way of revealing itself in the most unexpected places. And on this particular day, one woman's world was about to shatter in front of 200 studio audience members and millions of viewers at home. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel so you never miss these amazing Family Feud moments. The Martinez family walked onto the Family Feud stage with all the enthusiasm and energy you would expect from contestants on a game show. There was Roberto Martinez, a 42-year-old construction company owner with a confident smile and perfectly styled hair. Next to him stood his wife of 15 years, Diana Martinez, a petite woman with kind eyes and a nervous excitement that made her hands shake slightly. Their two teenage children, Miguel and Sofia, bounced with youthful energy, thrilled to be on their favorite game show. Rounding out the family was Roberto's younger sister, Carmen, who had flown in from Texas just for this taping. Steve Harvey greeted them with his signature warmth, shaking hands and making jokes to put the family at ease. He had no idea that within the next 20 minutes, he would be standing in the middle of one of the most dramatic moments in Family Feud history. The game started normally enough. The Martinez family faced off against the Chen family from Seattle, and the questions were typical Family Feud fare. Name something you might find in a kitchen. Name a popular vacation destination. Name something people do when they are trying to impress someone. The Martinez family was doing well, their chemistry apparent as they laughed and celebrated each correct answer. But then came the question that would change everything. Steve walked to the center of the stage, survey card in hand, and read the question that had been carefully selected by the show's producers. Why asked 100 people, what is a sign that someone might be cheating on their spouse? The studio audience murmured with interest. It was a bold question, but Family Feud had never shied away from asking about real-life situations. Roberto was at the buzzer, ready to answer first. He slapped the buzzer confidently and said, without hesitation, coming home late with unexplained absences. Steve nodded and turned to the board. Coming home late with unexplained absences, survey says. The board revealed it as the number 2 answer with 31 points. The Martinez family cheered, and it seemed like the game would continue as normal. But Diana, standing next to her husband, had gone very still. Her smile had frozen on her face, and something in her eyes had changed. Steve, ever the observant host, noticed but continued with the game. To understand what happened next, you need to know the story of Roberto and Diana Martinez. They had met 17 years ago at a community college in Phoenix, where Roberto was studying business management and Diana was working toward her teaching credential. Their love story had been the kind that made their friends believe in romance. Roberto, the ambitious son of Mexican immigrants who had worked construction jobs since he was 16 to help support his family, had big dreams of starting his own company. Diana, a first-generation American whose parents had fled El Salvador during the Civil War, shared his values of hard work and family loyalty. They married after 2 years of dating in a beautiful ceremony at the local Catholic church, surrounded by both their extended families. Diana became a second-grade teacher at an elementary school in their neighborhood, pouring her heart into educating children from immigrant families just like theirs. Roberto worked tirelessly to build his construction business from the ground up, starting with small residential projects and gradually working his way up to larger commercial contracts. For years, their life together seemed like the fulfillment of the American dream. They bought a modest house in a good school district. They had 2 beautiful children who were thriving in school and sports. They coached their kids' soccer teams, attended church on Sundays, and hosted big family gatherings for every holiday. Their relatives often pointed to them as an example of what a strong marriage looked like. But about 18 months ago, things had begun to change in ways that Diana could not quite put her finger on. Roberto started working longer hours, often not coming home until 9 or 10 at night, claiming that a big commercial project required his constant attention. He became protective of his phone, always keeping it face down and taking calls in another room. He started going to the gym early in the morning, a new habit for a man who had never been particularly interested in fitness. He bought new clothes, started wearing cologne, and paid more attention to his appearance than he had in years. When Diana asked him about these changes, Roberto always had an explanation ready. The project was demanding. He wanted to get healthier for the kids. He was trying to present a more professional image for potential clients. The explanations were reasonable, and Diana wanted to believe him. She had pushed down the small voice in her head that whispered warnings, telling herself she was being paranoid and insecure. The Family Feud appearance had been Roberto's idea. He had submitted their family for consideration 6 months earlier, writing enthusiastically about how much they loved the show and how it would be a dream come true to compete. When they got the call that they had been selected, the whole family was thrilled. For Diana, it seemed like a sign that things were getting back to normal. Roberto was excited about something they could do together as a family. Maybe she had been wrong to worry. Maybe the long hours really were just about work, and she had let her imagination run wild. The weeks leading up to the taping had been fun. They practiced together, watching old episodes and testing each other on potential answers. Roberto seemed more present, more engaged with the family than he had been in months. Diana had felt a sense of hope and relief. Back on the Family Feud stage, the game continued, but Diana was no longer fully present. Roberto's answer about coming home late with unexplained absences kept echoing in her mind. It was such a specific answer, delivered so quickly and confidently, the way he had not hesitated even for a second before hitting that buzzer and giving that particular response. Her hands were trembling now, and she tried to focus on the game, but a cold feeling was spreading through her chest. The Martinez family was winning, racking up points with each correct answer. But Diana found herself watching her husband with new eyes. She noticed how he avoided looking directly at her after that answer. She saw the slight flush on his neck, a tell she had learned to recognize over 15 years of marriage. He was uncomfortable, trying to cover it with extra enthusiasm and loud celebrations. Harvey moved to the next round, calling Roberto and the head of the Chen family to the buzzer for face-off. "We asked 100 people." Steve read, "What is something a cheating spouse might do to hide their affair?" Roberto's hand hit the buzzer first again, and without thinking, he blurted out, "Delete text messages and call history." The board revealed it as the #1 answer with 42 points. The studio audience applauded, but Harvey had paused. Something in the way Roberto had answered, the immediate, almost reflexive nature of his responses to these particular questions, had caught his attention. Steve was not just a game show host. He was a man with decades of life experience, someone who had counseled countless people on his various shows about relationships and infidelity. His instincts were telling him something was wrong. Diana was no longer trying to hide her distress. Tears had formed in her eyes, and her daughter Sophia had noticed, reaching out to touch her mother's arm in concern. "Mom, are you okay?" Sophia whispered, but Diana could not answer. She was remembering all the deleted messages she had glimpsed when Roberto's phone lit up with notifications. All the times she had tried to call him at work and been sent straight to voicemail. All the evenings he claimed to be at construction sites but came home smelling of perfume that was not hers. The game continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. The Chen family members were exchanging glances, sensing something was off. The studio audience had grown quieter, their entertainment giving way to an uncomfortable awareness that something real was unfolding in front of them. It was during the fast money round that everything fell apart. The Martinez family had won the main game, and now Roberto and Diana were chosen to play fast money together. Roberto went first, stepping up to the podium while Diana was taken backstage, so she could not hear his answers. Steve began asking the questions, and Roberto answered each one quickly and confidently. But it was his answer to the fourth question that would prove to be the breaking point. Name a place where people meet to have an affair. Steve asked. Hotel bar. Roberto answered without hesitation. When Diana returned to the stage for her turn at Fast Money, she looked like a woman walking to her execution. Her face was pale, her eyes red from crying backstage. Steve noticed immediately, and his usual jovial demeanor softened with concern. "Diana, you okay?" he asked gently, breaking from the normal fast-paced format of the round. Diana looked at Steve, then at the studio audience, then at her children standing off to the side with Roberto. She opened her mouth to say she was fine, to keep up the pretense, but the words would not come. Instead, she turned to face her husband directly. "Roberto," Diana said, her voice shaking but clear in the silent studio, "why do you know so much about cheating?" The question hung in the air like a thunderclap. The audience gasped. Steve Harvey froze, his eyes wide with shock. This was not in any script, not part of any game show format. This was real life exploding in front of millions of viewers, and nobody knew what to do. Roberto's face went through a series of expressions in rapid succession: confusion, denial, defensiveness, and finally, something that looked like resignation. "Diana, what are you talking about? We are on a game show. I am just answering the questions," he said, trying to laugh it off, but his voice lacked conviction. "No," Diana said, shaking her head. She was crying now, but her voice was getting stronger. "No, Roberto, you answered those questions too fast, too confidently, coming home late with unexplained absences, deleting text messages and call history, meeting at hotel bars. These are not just survey answers to you, are they? These are things you know because you have been doing them." Steve Harvey, a man who prided himself on always knowing what to say, stood speechless. He looked at the producers in the booth, but they were just as stunned. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every devastating second. Roberto's sister Carmen had stepped forward, her face stricken. "Diana, maybe we should talk about this privately," she tried to suggest, but Diana shook her head violently. "No, no more privacy, no more secrets. I have kept quiet for 18 months, Roberto. 18 months of you coming home late, smelling like someone else's perfume. 18 months of deleted messages and whispered phone calls. 18 months of you lying to my face while I convinced myself I was being crazy and insecure." The teenagers, Miguel and Sofia, were crying now, holding onto each other as they watched their family implode in front of a studio audience. Other families, production crew members, and even the competing Chen family stood frozen, witnesses to this private agony made public. "Diana, please," Roberto started, but she cut him off. "Who is she, Roberto? How long has it been going on? And how could you bring our family here, to this show, knowing what you have been doing?" For a long moment, Roberto said nothing. He looked at his wife, at his children, at the hundreds of eyes watching him, and something in him broke. The facade crumbled. He sank into a chair that a crew member had quickly brought out, and buried his face in his hands. "Her name is Ashley," he said finally, his voice barely audible. "She works for one of the suppliers I use for materials. It started about a year and a half ago." The confession sent shockwaves through the studio. Diana's knees buckled, and Steve Harvey himself rushed to support her, helping her into a chair. "I am so sorry," Roberto was saying through his tears. "I am so sorry. It meant nothing. It was a mistake that got out of control. I love you, Diana. I love our family. I never meant for any of this to happen." Diana was sobbing, her whole body shaking with the force of her grief and rage. "You never meant for any of this to happen. You had an affair for 18 months, Roberto. You lied to me every single day. You looked our children in the eyes and pretended to be a faithful husband and father. You brought us here to this show, knowing what you had done. What part of that just happened?" Steve Harvey, having recovered his composure, made a decision in that moment that would define his career as not just an entertainer, but as a man of integrity. He turned to the cameras and spoke directly to America. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to stop the taping here. What you are witnessing is not entertainment. This is a family in crisis and they need privacy and support, not cameras." He turned to the producers. "Turn the cameras off. Now." But Diana stopped him. "No," she said, her voice hoarse from crying but firm. "No, Steve. Let them keep rolling. Let everyone see what infidelity really looks like. Not some funny survey question, but the real devastation it causes. Let people see what happens when someone you trusted with your whole heart betrays you. Steve looked at her with immense compassion and respect. Diana, you do not have to do this. You do not owe anyone this pain. Maybe not, Diana said, standing up with dignity that was heartbreaking to witness. But maybe someone watching this needs to see it. Maybe someone is at home right now, seeing the signs like I did but talking themselves out of believing it. Maybe someone is thinking about having an affair and needs to see the faces of the children whose family they will destroy. She turned back to Roberto, who was still crying in his chair. I loved you so much. I gave you everything I had. We built a life together, a family, a home, and you threw it all away for what? For someone who meant nothing. What happened after that devastating moment on the Family Feud stage became one of the most talked about incidents in television history. The episode, which initially aired with heavy editing to protect the family's privacy, sparked a national conversation about infidelity, marriage, and the importance of honesty in relationships. Steve Harvey handled the situation with remarkable grace and wisdom. After the cameras stopped rolling, he spent over an hour with the Martinez family, helping them process what had happened and connecting Diana with resources for counseling and support. He canceled the rest of that day's tapings, recognizing that his staff and the audience needed time to process what they had witnessed. The Martinez family did not win their 20th of Zalozen that day. They left the studio separately, Roberto going with his sister while Diana took the children to stay with her parents. The pain of that public revelation was something the family would carry with them forever. But something extraordinary emerged from that tragedy. In the weeks following the incident, Diana received thousands of messages from women and men who had experienced similar betrayals. Her courage in confronting Roberto publicly, in refusing to hide her pain, had given others permission to face their own difficult truths. She became an unexpected advocate for people dealing with infidelity, speaking openly about the devastation of betrayal and the long, difficult process of healing. Roberto, faced with the public consequences of his actions, made the difficult decision to end his affair immediately and seek help. He entered therapy, both individual and later marriage counseling with Diana. He wrote a public apology that went viral, not making excuses but taking full accountability for his choices and the pain he had caused. I destroyed the most precious thing in my life because of my own selfishness and weakness, he wrote. I do not deserve forgiveness, but I am committed to becoming the man my family needed me to be all along. The path forward for the Martinez family was not easy or straightforward. Diana filed for legal separation initially, needing space and time to decide whether their marriage could be saved. She threw herself into therapy, working through her feelings of betrayal, anger, and grief. The children received counseling as well, processing the trauma of watching their family fall apart on national television. Steve Harvey, true to his character, did not abandon the family after the cameras stopped rolling. He checked in regularly with Diana, offering support and connecting her with his network of counselors and relationship experts. When Diana started speaking publicly about her experience, Steve invited her onto his talk show for a special episode about infidelity and healing. 6 months after that fateful Family Feud taping, Diana and Roberto sat down together for a televised interview on Steve Harvey's show. It was the first time they had appeared together publicly since that devastating day. The interview was raw, honest, and deeply moving. Diana spoke about the ongoing pain of betrayal, the difficulty of rebuilding trust, and her decision to give their marriage another chance, not because Roberto deserved it, but because she wanted to model for her children what real forgiveness and accountability looked like. Roberto spoke about the therapy he had undergone, the deep personal work he had done to understand why he had made such destructive choices, and his commitment to earning back his family's trust through consistent action, not just words. I cannot undo what I did, Roberto said during that interview, tears streaming down his face. I cannot take back the pain I caused or erase the memories of that day from my children's minds, but I can choose every single day to be better, to be honest, to be present, to show up for my family the way I should have been doing all along. Diana added, People ask me all the time why I am giving him another chance. The truth is, I am not doing it for him. I am doing it for me, for our children, because I want to know that I did everything I could to save our family. If we ultimately cannot make it work, I will know I tried. But I am also not pretending everything is okay. Trust is not given, it is earned day by day, choice by choice. The Martinez family's story became a powerful teaching moment about the real consequences of infidelity and the difficult, messy process of attempting reconciliation. Marriage counselors began using clips from their Family Feud moment and subsequent interviews to help couples understand the importance of honesty and communication. Churches and community organizations invited Diana to speak about forgiveness and healing. Roberto spoke to men's groups about accountability and the ripple effects of selfish choices. 1 year after that dramatic Family Feud taping, the Martinez family returned to television for a follow-up special. The transformation was remarkable. While the scars of betrayal were still visible, there was also evidence of genuine healing and growth. The family had rebuilt their foundation on radical honesty and transparency. Roberto's phone was an open book. He had changed jobs to remove himself from situations that had enabled his affair. He attended therapy weekly and participated in a men's accountability group. The children were healing as well, though they spoke honestly about the ongoing effects of what they had witnessed. Diana shared that the journey had transformed her understanding of herself and what she needed from her relationships. I realized that before the affair, I was living in a kind of comfortable denial. I saw the signs but talked myself out of believing them because the truth was too painful. Now, I trust my instincts. I speak up when something does not feel right. I do not accept easy explanations or make myself small to avoid conflict. The couple had also started a blog and podcast called After the Affair, where they shared their journey with brutal honesty. They talked about the setbacks, the moments when reconciliation felt impossible, the triggers that brought the pain flooding back. But they also shared the small victories, the moments of reconnection, the gradual rebuilding of intimacy and trust. Their vulnerability helped thousands of other couples navigating similar betrayals. 3 years later, the Martinez family's transformation was complete. They had not only survived the public devastation of Roberto's affair, being exposed on Family Feud, but they had used that terrible moment as a catalyst for profound personal and family growth. They had written a book together about their experience, with all proceeds going to fund free marriage counseling for couples who could not afford it. Roberto had completely rebuilt his relationship with his children. Miguel and Sofia, now young adults, spoke openly about how watching their father do the hard work of change had taught them about true accountability and the possibility of redemption. They also spoke about how their mother's strength in setting boundaries and demanding better had shown them what self-respect looked like. The family returned to Steve Harvey's show one final time for a special 5-year anniversary episode. The contrast with that first devastating appearance was striking. Where before there had been tears of betrayal and pain, now there was genuine joy and hard-won peace. Steve welcomed them with a warm embrace, clearly moved by their journey. "I have to tell you," Steve said during that episode, "in all my years of television, I have never seen a family walk through fire like you all did and come out stronger on the other side. What happened on that Family Feud stage was one of the hardest things I have ever witnessed. But what you have done since then, that is the real story." Diana spoke about how that terrible day had ultimately become a gift, though it took her a long time to see it that way. If Roberto's affair had never been exposed, I would still be living in that limbo of denial and suspicion. Our marriage would have continued to deteriorate slowly. Our children would have grown up watching a relationship based on lies. As terrible as that public moment was, it forced everything into the light, and you cannot heal what you keep hidden in darkness. Roberto added, "I am not grateful for the pain I caused. I will regret that for the rest of my life. But I am grateful that I was stopped before I destroyed my family completely. That moment on stage, as humiliating as it was, saved me from myself. It forced me to face what I had become and choose to be better." The couple revealed that they had just celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary, a milestone that had seemed impossible 5 years earlier. They had renewed their vows in a private ceremony with just their children and closest family members, a sacred moment of recommitment built on the foundation of honesty and hard-won trust. The impact of the Martinez family's story extended far beyond their personal journey. Steve Harvey incorporated their experience into his relationship advice, using their story as a powerful example of both the devastating consequences of infidelity and the possibility of healing through radical honesty and accountability. The original Family Feud moment, which had been edited for the broadcast version of the show, was eventually released in full with the family's permission as an educational tool for marriage counselors and relationship educators. Mental health professionals noted the Martinez case as a significant example of how public accountability, while initially traumatic, could actually facilitate healing when combined with proper therapeutic support. The family's willingness to share their journey, with all its messiness and setbacks, provided hope for others who felt trapped in the aftermath of betrayal. As the years passed, Diana became a sought-after speaker on topics of betrayal trauma, healing, and the rebuilding of trust. She was honest about the fact that some relationships should end after infidelity, that not every betrayal can or should be forgiven. But she also shared that for those who chose to attempt reconciliation, the path forward required both partners to show up differently, to do the deep personal work, and to commit to a new way of relating built on transparency and emotional honesty. Roberto, for his part, never shied away from his responsibility for the pain he had caused. He spoke to men's groups about the lies we tell ourselves to justify betrayal, about the importance of integrity even when no one is watching, and about the long process of rebuilding trust once it has been shattered. He was particularly passionate about helping other men understand that being a good provider was not enough to be a good husband. That true partnership required emotional presence and vulnerability. The Martinez children, Miguel and Sofia, eventually shared their own perspectives on growing up in the aftermath of public family trauma. They spoke at youth conferences about the importance of choosing partners who demonstrated integrity through actions, not just words. They also talked about the power of watching their parents do the hard work of accountability and forgiveness, of seeing that people could change if they were willing to face their failures honestly. 10 years after that fateful Family Feud taping, the Martinez family had become an unlikely symbol of hope and redemption. Their story was taught in university marriage and family therapy programs as a case study in crisis intervention and post-infidelity recovery. Documentaries had been made about their journey, always with their full participation and permission. They had helped countless families navigate similar crises through their counseling center, which they had opened 5 years after the affair was exposed. Steve Harvey often reflected on that day as one of the most important moments in his career. "I have made people laugh for decades," he said in an interview. "I have given away money and made dreams come true on game shows. But that day with the Martinez family taught me about the power of truth and the possibility of redemption." Diana's courage in that moment, refusing to pretend everything was okay, refusing to protect someone who had betrayed her, that changed how I think about my responsibility as someone with a platform. The original question that started it all, "What is a sign that someone might be cheating on their spouse?" became infamous in Family Feud history. The show's producers were more careful about including questions about infidelity after the Martinez incident, understanding the potential for real pain that existed beneath the surface of what seemed like harmless survey questions. But they also recognized that the Martinez family's story had demonstrated television's unique power to capture authentic human moments that could inspire change and healing. As this remarkable story draws to a close, it is worth reflecting on the lessons the Martinez family's journey teaches us. Infidelity destroys families, breaks hearts, and leaves scars that never fully heal. But it is also possible, with tremendous effort, radical honesty, and professional support, for families to rebuild after betrayal. The path is long and painful, and not every relationship should or can be saved. But for those who choose to try, the Martinez family stands as proof that redemption is possible when people are willing to face their failures, do the hard work of change, and commit to building something new on the ashes of what was destroyed. Diana and Roberto Martinez walked onto the Family Feud stage thinking they were just playing a game. They left having experienced one of the most devastating moments of their lives, played out in front of a studio audience and millions of viewers. But they chose to use that pain as fuel for transformation, both personally and in their relationship. They chose transparency over hiding. They chose accountability over excuses. They chose the long, difficult road of reconciliation over the easier path of walking away. And in doing so, they gave hope to countless others facing similar crises. Their story reminds us that even our darkest moments can become sources of light if we are willing to face them honestly and use them as catalysts for real change. If this story moved you or taught you something valuable, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more incredible Family Feud moments and inspiring stories of human resilience and transformation. These are the real stories that remind us of our shared humanity and the power we all have to choose healing and growth, even after the most devastating betrayals.